Hello, good evening everybody. My name is Patrick Vandenberg. I'm the Director of Geovital Academy for Radiation Protection. We're originally a naturopathic health clinic based in Austria. And I'm delighted this evening to introduce Tristan. He's one of our senior consultants. We met a long time ago when, and I never actually heard this story till recently, Tristan was studying mechanical engineering and biomedicine engineering. And during his studies, he actually...
Just lift up a little
closer. All right. He ended up in a wheelchair due to inflammation issues. Doctors, specialists sort of put their hands in the air, couldn't help him any further. And that's what prompted him to start studying complementary and natural approaches to health and studying the environment. And that's after which we came in and made some improvements to his home environment, and eventually he left the wheelchair behind him and then is now one of our senior consultants helping people around Victoria and also interstate. We've done quite a bit of work together. We've been in Malaysia together, speaking to audiences full of doctors, helping royal families with their houses and everybody. Tristan is a kinesiologist and he practices from, Origin Health with Naomi Gillespie, who's a author on pain relief. So tonight Tristan is going to share a lot of information with you about radiation, what it is, where it comes from, a lot of things you can do yourself to reduce your exposure, but no doubt he'll also be telling you what sort of fundamental things will need to be investigated or improved in a home to make substantial differences. So anyway, without further ado, here's Tristan. Enjoy.
Thank you very much, Patrick. G'day everyone, I'm Tristan. As Patrick said, I used to be in a wheelchair, some days not even able to hold a pen. All the specialists and surgeons said that there was nothing that they could do for me, nothing more. So I started studying natural health. I learned about the role of inflammation in the body, and like Patrick said, it wasn't until I got Geovital out and I looked at my bedroom environment, because that's when we replace our cells, as we're going to learn. Now, this is, as you can imagine, a subject that I'm very passionate about, that's very important to me, and I do what I do because I don't want anyone else to have to go through what I went through. It's also, to help improve your health and be the best you that you can be. All right, so here we go. So, thank you all for being here. Just you being here and listening to this talk, it shows everyone in this room, but you're also showing yourself your willingness to learn, to grow, to empower, and to change. And not only for yourself, but also as you'll learn, you'll be able to create positive change for your kids and your grandchildren and even their grandchildren. As what you learn could have an impact, not only yours and your children's DNA, but also potentially your entire genetic line. So now we're going to sink our teeth straight away into what I feel is the really juicy stuff, which is what makes us us. Because once we learn this, then everything else becomes easier to comprehend. And it's not just technology and health, but also all aspects of our lives. Our relationships with ourselves, relationships with community, as well as the relationship with the universe and our small part in it. Now I'm going to tell you a bit about Geovital. I'm going to talk about what is electromagnetic radiation, about safety surrounding electromagnetic radiation exposure. We'll look into the research as well as the safety standards both here and overseas and the US and Canada. And then we're going to look at the hundreds of doctors and scientists who have stood up and disagreed with those standards. We're going to look at the impact on the environment, studying into bees, colony collapse disorder, and high frequency radiation. Then we're going to look at blue light and how it affects our circadian rhythm. So for those who don't know, our circadian cycle is responsible for many things, which also includes our melatonin and serotonin production, as well as regulating our cell division cycle. So that's how we make new cells and dispose of old cells. So which can then have massive implications on the health of our body and subsequent disease states. And then it's empowerment time. I want you all to walk out of here not fearful, right, but knowledgeable and empowered. because fear creates its own issues in the body, which I work with on a daily basis as a kinesiologist. All right, so we're going to look at solutions, ways that you can be your own detective and make simple small changes to improve your environment and your cellular health every day. As well, I'll show you the products that I use myself in my home and clinic that can further reduce your exposure and help us live with technology in a safer way. I'm trying to keep this as short as we can so that Brian doesn't have to lock the doors. So please forgive, I'm just going to read a little bit to keep me on track. So we replace around 98% of the cells in our body every single year. So how many of you actually knew that? Okay, it's educated group, this is brilliant. All right, so that's almost a whole new you for each birthday. Replace our gut lining every 2 to 3 days, our skin every 6 weeks, and our liver every 8 weeks. But this happens when we sleep. Right? Now, there are around 100 trillion cells in each of us, and depending on which study we look at, we replace billions, if not trillions, of these cells every single day. Now, each strand of DNA in our cells is about 3 billion digits long. Right? And if we took a tiny little strand of DNA and spread it out, it goes for about 2 meters. So each tiny little cell, it's all packed up. If errors occur in DNA replication, cells can become abnormal and give rise to disease. But it's not just DNA replication that can go wrong. There are many factors that determine how healthy our new cells are. So things like what we nourish ourselves with, the toxins we ingest or absorb from our environment, as well as the impact of stress, trauma, and unresolved emotions. So we replace ourselves when we sleep. This is when the great positive work we've done during the day, from the healthy lifestyle choices we make, emotional and mental care is used. Now it's your body's turn to do the work. But what stresses is your body coping with when you sleep? So how much energy is your body spending on stress rather than growing healthy new DNA? So if you can imagine, like I said, it's a bit hard with the microphone in my hand, but imagine a set of scales. So scales here, right? So on one hand, we've got all the good work we do during the day, from the clean water, sunshine, friends, supplements, great food, all the work we do. So when we sleep, it's now our time for our body to do that work, to use all that nourishment to grow healthy new cells. But on the other hand, we've got all the stresses that we're coping with. So all the toxins, your environmental toxins, chemical toxins, our own self-talk, our own stress load. We can also have the toxins that we were born with, passed on from our mums and stuff like that. All right. So, yeah, this is the nourishment versus your toxic load. And that's what I feel like sitting at my computer a lot of the time. All right. So the health of our cells is also dependent on our body's voltage. So too low voltage and our cells don't have enough power to grow perfect, healthy new cells. Yet too much voltage plays havoc with our systems, resulting in inflammation and free radicals. So it can affect the way that we grow new cells, the way we form new neural connections, as well as our stress and emotional states. This modern world is very unnatural to us. Our EMR exposure is over 1 quintillion times greater than what we have evolved to. And so throughout the history of our evolution, this has only occurred in a blink of an eye. So who's heard that we need to keep our bodies alkaline? Yep, excellent. Who's heard that pH, alkalinity and acidity in a pH scale, is actually a logarithmic scale of voltage? Excellent. All right, so from positive 400 millivolt, which is acidic, to negative 400 millivolt, which is alkaline. So if you ever see the digital pH readers, all they are voltmeters. They're just measuring voltage. So The positive means it's acidic, means it's taking electrons, like rust or acid. Or oxidative stress, free radicals. The negative sign means it's alkaline, means it's giving electrons, right? Like antioxidants. Right, so many of us know we need our bodies to be alkaline, but what does that really mean? It means we're basically charging our body's batteries with extra electrons, giving our body a supply of extra electrons to balance out the acid. So it's like putting an alkaline to balance out an acid. So our bodies have their own voltage. We need negative 75 millivolt to grow healthy new cells. At negative 15, we feel tired, but at positive 30, that's when cancer can start to form. So, now, we're getting a bit deep into the science of it. I'm going to try and keep this brief and as simple as possible. This is your no-ono cycle. So this is your voltage-gated calcium channels. So in our cells, we have these little gates. It's like a little electric gates to let your car in the garage kind of thing. And what that does is allows calcium into the cell. But what a lot of studies have found that at very low amounts of electromagnetic radiation, even you can find static electric or static magnetic fields that you might find in your mattress, can trigger these voltage-gated calcium channels. Now, what happens then is we get too much calcium into the cell, which can cause peroxynitrite and superoxide, which are massive free radicals. So basically, an acidic state occurs from an oversupply in calcium in the cells, which is looking to steal electrons from a body, which is known as the no-ono cycle. So this is what it's been linked to. So inflammation and chronic inflammatory diseases, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, depression, anxiety, ADHD, heart disease, Alzheimer's, immune dysfunction, and neurological disease. Now that's just to name a few. We're going to touch a little bit more on this in a bit later on as well. Now this is what I think is really cool, and this is what kind of gives you an idea on why electricity and why frequencies can affect us. So we're made of molecules, right? We're 80% water, which is H2O, which is 2 hydrogen atoms to 1 oxygen atom. But what is an atom? Right? So if you've got your nucleus and then you've got your electrons spinning around, but if you look at the size difference between the outside of the nucleus the outside of the atom to the nucleus, you've got 99, depending on which science people you follow, but they pretty much all agree, 99.9999999% free space. So you put that into context, it's kind of like getting the MCG. So picture the MCG, drop a blueberry into the middle of the MCG. Right, the blueberry is your nucleus, the MCG is the size of the atom. What makes up that atom? What holds it all together? And it's an electromagnetic field. Now, if we think of electrons moving, what do we call electrons moving? That's what we call electricity. Right? And they're moving at a particular rate, so a particular frequency. So what are we? We're an electromagnetic field with a particular frequency and a particular voltage. Right. So you can think of it this way, like people go, well, why aren't I falling through the floor? Why can I put my hand on this? Why is it solid? Because these atoms, these fields are held together. They're attracting each other or they're repelling each other. So we have voltage and many different frequencies in our body. Another thing is, have you ever heard that we store emotion in our body? So it's one of the beliefs and the reasons behind yoga. It's a major component of Chinese medicine, and we're only just really understanding now, in the more Western world, what different cultures have been teaching for thousands of years. We're a bit slow. So what is emotion? Emotion being a neurochemical response, right, to a situation or stimuli. And a neurochemical response can be a neurochemical response attached to a particular memory. But what are neurochemicals? Well, they're just atoms, which are atoms, just electromagnetic fields at particular frequencies. So a motion, which is energy in motion, should pass through us and keep on moving. But when we suppress it and we hold on to it, we're being stoic or we're gritting our teeth, or it's too much, we're going through some trauma and it's too much emotion to deal with, it gets trapped, stored in our body. So we're storing these emotions, these frequencies in our body that shouldn't be there. So our bodies, you can imagine like an orchestra, right? And so if the violin section, even one violin is out of tune, the whole body becomes discordant. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah, I see a few people nodding their heads. Great. Okay. So this is something that I guess some of us innately know to be true, but it's not the sort of thing we're usually taught in school. All right. So what is electromagnetic radiation? Here we have a wavelength. So basically, your different wavelengths, so the frequency, the length of the wave, determines what type of electric radiation is. We have a very small amount of electromagnetic radiation that our eyes can read, and that's colour. That's light. So there's all this stuff going on that we can't see, that's beyond our ability of our eyes to see, but it's surrounding us all the time. It can be your power lines, your TV, microwaves, all that kind of stuff. As the wavelength becomes shorter, the more power is required to push that wavelength distance. So when we had, like the big radio antennas, we weren't seeing, there's still issues, but we weren't seeing as much issues. But with all the mobile phone towers, they're requiring a lot of power to push these high frequencies to the distances they need. All right, magnetic and electric fields. So I don't think I'd want to be living there. What we find, so with power comes in on the hot and then back on the neutral. Now with the cabling in our houses, all the 100 metres of wiring in our houses, what happens is the power's coming in on the hot, and then you get an electric field spinning around this way, but then as it comes back on the neutral, it spins in the opposite way, and those two fields dampen each other out. But when you get to power lines, there's a big separation between these two fields, and so you get magnetic fields. A lot of houses we go to can be a problem with the power lines out the front of the street. Thankfully, there is a lot of instances where they reduce by the time we get to the front door and the front bedrooms, but not always. And if you're on a second story or the house is forward on the street, or if there's a lot of power being used, the more power, the bigger the field. So until you measure, you don't know. Now, Geovital, we go out and we do pre-purchase inspections because magnetic fields are basically impossible to shield against. Those really long wavelengths, there's been people that have tried and spent lots and lots and lots of money and been unhappy with the results. So it's always best to check first. Yes.
Can I just ask, what EMF reader do you use to check?
Oh, okay, we'll do some questions at the end and then I'll show you. We've got a special one from Geovital that I'll show you. So this is electric fields. We find a situation in 95% of homes that there is an issue. So this is a short video of Dr. Laredo Ritter, who's the president of the North American Sleep Society, with Geovital Austria director, so the big boss, Sasha Hahnen. Now they're talking about the circuit cutoff switches that Geovital invented that can go into your meter, your fuse box. So what happens is when you're not drawing power on that line, so as soon as you turn off the last appliance, all that power is cut back to the meter box to get rid of those electric fields. So one thing I like to ask people is, that feeling. So say you're at home and there's nothing on, but the power goes out. And there's nothing that's suddenly turned off to alert you to the fact, but you're like, oh, the power's out. Because it feels weird, right? It feels eerie, it feels unnatural. But the sad thing is, that's our natural state. We spend all day like this trying to cope with this stress. And we spend all night, when we're meant to be spending energy growing healthy new cells, like this, coping with this stress. So with Geovital's products, we try and create that natural, environment that we've evolved to. So you'll see as he turns the lamp off, it takes about 2 seconds before the circuit realizes there's no draw, and it cuts the power in the wall behind. Sorry, I better do this.
And when we shut the light off, so go to sleep, it takes about 1 to 2 seconds. And now we get the electricity off the bed or out of the bed. Yeah? So, and it's disturbing the whole nerve system. Mm-hmm. So everything, I told you, everything is working from our computer over the nerve system to the rest of the body.
If you have 300 or this, then I'm knocking down those receptors. So of course that we're gonna have cardiovascular problems, neurological problems. I didn't mention this, but the two main causes of death in the whole world is cardiac problems, and if you see cardiac problems, the cardiovascular system have his gated voltage channels, and neurological problems, the same channels. I mean, different. There's 149 different varieties of those channels, but those are the same channels. They cannot pick electricity, because if they pick electricity, I can tell you, they're gonna stop functioning well.
Yeah.
So Dr. Laredo was talking about, as I said before, the voltage-gated calcium channels. And did you all notice what he said there? The two biggest causes of death, cardiovascular or neurological in nature. And we find the L type, the low voltage type, voltage-gated calcium channels, in our cardiovascular systems and our nervous system. So, high-frequency smart devices. I'll tell you a little story. So when I was studying, I would swim 3K a morning. I was bodybuilding. I was in the top 5% of my uni. At the same time, working for the uni, mentoring students first year physics and first year maths. I was one of those A-type personalities, just that go, go, go. We had a young son, so it was like I was a car, revving red line 24 hours a day. So if we look at a linear scale of health. Now, Patrick taught me this. I think it was the first day I met him. He forgets. But if you look at a linear scale of health, from perfectly healthy with no symptoms here to incredibly unhealthy but still no symptoms here. Right? Now, then there can be the one thing that we call the straw that breaks the camel's back. And suddenly our systems aren't keeping up supply versus demand, and we become symptomatic. And then there's levels upon levels upon levels above that. So as all your other systems are straining to keep up and they start failing, and your body ends up basically going into safe mode, like your computer, just to keep you alive and keep your vital organs going. And that's where I ended up. I ended up in a bed, unable to watch TV, unable to move, unable to do anything. I was in a really, really bad way. I learnt when I managed to get a little bit better, every time I had, some processing power, I was learning. I was learning everything I could to try and understand what was going wrong. Now, I discovered the role of high frequency electromagnetic radiation with inflammation, and I learned about smart meters. I was actually part of the study into the rollout of smart meters in Victoria with all the biological health effects. So I thought, oh, before that happened, I thought, what, have I got a smart meter? Sure enough, I had one on my bedroom wall. Right, when was that installed? I went back through my power bills, and the very last week that I stopped working, studying, or exercising at any real capacity was the same week a smart meter was put on my bedroom wall. Now, I'm not saying that that caused everything. Like I said, I was already running at red line. It could have been something else that tipped me over the edge. But we find that they are a real issue with a lot of the clients that we speak to. One doctor described it to me as like a flash grenade going off in your bedroom in the middle of the night. So the pineal gland sees high frequency radiation as light. So that affects our melatonin production. So not all smart meters transmit. Okay, so just because you've got a smart meter on your wall doesn't necessarily mean that you need to panic. Okay, some of them will, I'm not saying you should panic anyway, but some of them will send packets of data from house to house to house, and then one house might transmit. So not all of them are active. But what we do find with every single meter box I've ever measured on the back of a wall, you know how I was saying about the hot and the neutral coming together, and as they're split, you get magnetic fields. Well, when they have to wire up the meter boxes, they have to split the wires. So you get a localized magnetic field. So if your bed is up against, a wall with a meter box on the other side, even if your smart meter isn't producing high frequency radiation, you don't want to be there. Some cases we find if you move the bed out a foot, it can fix the problem, or put it on another wall, or put it in another bedroom. If you're building a new house, please don't put smart meters on a bedroom. Put them on a garage or something. Or if you can not have them at all, that's great, but there's not many people that have been able to do that. Okay, so high frequency smart devices. Some people have called them dumb devices. Maybe it's us, what we should be using that word for using them. But the technology, we've come to embrace it, we've come to use it, so we need to come up with ways to keep using it, but safely. To understand the risks, to understand the dangers, and then, you know what to do. It's like learning, when something's hot. Okay, as a kid, you touch something hot, you go, oh, I'm not going to touch that anymore because it's not great for us. You're going to use a pair of gloves to pick up a hot pot thing out of the oven or something like that. High frequency devices. So we find, unfortunately, that a lot of the appliances coming out now are basically high frequency enabled, Wi-Fi enabled. That whole Internet of Things, everything's connecting, trying to connect to your smart meter and things like that. So about 6 years ago, I put in a new aircon to my home. I was measuring it under 50 microvolt in the body in my home, which was a nice level we want to see. The electrician turned the aircon on, activated it, and I had my meter out just in case, and it shot up to over 1,000. Right, so I thought, what have I done? Now, thankfully, my smart meter wasn't one that was enabled, or I don't know what happens or how it happens, but it didn't connect, it didn't keep emitting, and it went quiet. But this is why we need to, a really good practice is to keep high frequency electrical devices out of the bedroom. Because that's when we replace ourselves, like we said before, that's the area that we want to get right. And just to be aware of these things. Like I said, we don't want to be fearful, we want to be empowered. And this is me every week trying to deal with the NBN. With your modems, a lot of modems, you can actually switch the Wi-Fi off, right? And you can run Ethernet cables throughout your house. So with my young son, he wants to play on his tablet. We have Ethernet ports throughout the house, and he can plug in. And then I've got adapters here that I can show you that you can plug the Ethernet straight into your laptop, into your tablet, and then turn it onto airplane mode. You don't have to have it on. Even if you're using your phone, you can even use Ethernet on your phone without needing to use Wi-Fi. So if you're sitting in the same spot on the couch every single night using your device, plug it in. The other thing is, I think it's in the next slide. No, it's one of the other ones. This is one of Patrick's slides that I've pinched. Sorry, Patrick. This is when Hello Barbie was out. So the Barbie, what was doing, it was recording kids, recording that data to a data center, and then that was sending back to Barbie with a response that she should say back to the child. Yeah, you can imagine the implications with that. There was a big uproar, but even something as innocent as that, sometimes they have them emitting high frequency radiation, as well as, security concerns and privacy concerns and everything else. But you can imagine a little kid going to sleep with their new best friend who talks to them, cuddling up a night. It sickens me. Okay. Another type of radiation there is your geopathic stress, your natural radiation. So as we all probably know, the Earth's a magnet. We have a North Pole and a South Pole. We have lines of magnetic flux. So we have what we call Hartmann lines and what we call Curry lines. So Hartmann lines run 2 to 4 metres apart, north-south, east to west. Curry lines are at 45 degrees to that. We also have underground water veins. So basically any electrons flowing can create a stress on the body. Now, you've got fault lines, you've got ground mixing, and a few other things that we test for Geovital. But what we find, if you're sleeping in the same bed every night in the same spot, and you're sleeping on one of these points, issues can happen. So we call them cancer spots. So where it's a great name, where the green lines cross, that's double in power, or when the red lines cross. So not saying it causes cancer, but cancer requires, as I understand it, 7 times more energy to grow than a regular cell. Right, so if your body's not able to naturally deal with cancer via its immune system and its melatonin, then it's like being in Queensland in a hot, humid environment with a bathroom with no ventilation and being surprised that mould grows. That all makes sense? Yeah. So this is what we look for. We find that some animals love natural radiation. Bees love it, cats love it. Some animals like us hate it. Horses hate it, dogs hate it. So if you've got a cat and it sleeps on your bed and in the same spot every night, where your cat sleeps might be the place that you don't want to be sleeping. Right? We find that, a quick little story, how are we going for time? Quick little story. I did a doctor's place. He had 3 daughters. I didn't know any of their health issues. I didn't know whose bedroom was whose, but I mapped out all 3 bedrooms. Now, one of the bedrooms, there was all this rubbish up in the head area. And the doctor and his wife are standing there, and I've said, come in, I've mapped it all out for you. And they're like, oh my goodness, we put our daughter to sleep every single night with her head on the pillow. And every morning, without fail, we come in here and she's tucked into a tiny little ball down the end of the bed where there was none of this rubbish. So kids, we all innately know this, right? But we learn just to put up as we grow up. Now, with this doctor, the really cool thing was Geovital developed these mats that go underneath the bed to help disperse this energy. So I said to the doctor, I gave him one of these mats, said, put it under your daughter's bed, don't show it to her, don't tell her it's there, see what happens. So I spoke to him the next day and he said, you'll never believe what. She spent the whole night sleeping on her pillow. Right? We went in there in the morning, she was still asleep on her pillow. But not only that, he goes, I didn't tell you that she was having nightmares every single night. And that was the first night that she didn't have a nightmare since she moved into that house. Right. So, where's the evidence? This is a good one. We did the Melbourne building show. We had all these, developers and builders walking past, going, what is this rubbish? Where's the evidence? So I would just pick this up. It's a bit hard with a microphone in my hand, and just drop that on the table. All right, so that is called the Bioinitiative Report. That's prepared by 29 authors from 10 countries, 10 holding medical degrees, 21 PhDs, and 3 MCA, MA, or MPHSs. Don't ask me to explain what those last ones are. I forget. But it's a compilation of lots and lots and lots and lots of published peer-reviewed studies onto the biological effects of electromagnetic radiations at levels well below the government safety standard. Okay, here's a little video for you.
I'm here with disturbing news about our favorite gadgets, cell phones, tablets, Wi-Fi, etc. Putting it bluntly, they are damaging the living cells in our bodies and killing many of us prematurely. I'm Dr. Martin Blank from the Department of Physiology and Cellular Biophysics at Columbia University. It is distressing for me and more than 160 colleagues who today are petitioning the United Nations requesting that they address this problem. We are scientists and engineers, and I am here to tell you we have created something that is harming us, and it is getting out of control. Before Edison's light bulb, there was very little electromagnetic radiation in our environment. The levels today are very many times higher than natural background levels and are growing rapidly because of all the new devices that emit this radiation. An example that a lot of us have in our pockets right now is the cell phone. One study shows that as cell phone usage has spread widely, the incidence of fatal brain cancer in younger people has more than tripled. We are putting cellular antennas on residential buildings and on top of hospitals where people are trying to get well. Wireless utility meters and cell towers are blanketing our neighborhoods with radiation. It's particularly frightening that radiation from our telecommunication and power line technology is damaging the DNA in our cells. It is clear to many biologists that this can account for the rising cancer rates. Future generations, our children, are at risk. These biologists and scientists are not being heard on the committees that set safety standards. The biological facts are being ignored, and as a result, the safety limits are much too high. They are not protective. More protection will probably result from full disclosure of possible conflicts of interest between regulators and industry. Rising exposure to electromagnetic radiation is a global problem. The World Health Organization and international standard-setting bodies are not acting to protect the public's health and well-being. International exposure guidelines for electromagnetic fields must be strengthened to reflect the reality of their impact on our bodies, and in particular, on our DNA. Although we are still in the midst of a great technological transformation, the time to deal with the harmful biological and health effects is long overdue. We are really all part of a large biological experiment without our informed consent. To protect our children, ourselves, and our ecosystem, we must reduce exposure by establishing more protective guidelines. And so today, scientists from around the world are submitting an appeal to the United Nations, its member states, and the World Health Organization to provide leadership in dealing with this emerging public health crisis.
So that's from 2015. There's, as of January 28, 2023, 258 EMF scientists from 43 nations have signed the appeal. Now, those 258, to be able to be part of this appeal, you have to have done published, peer-reviewed research into the biological effects of electromagnetic radiation. So these are the world's, like the people that know in the field, that we listen to, that we want, if there's an issue, to tell us about it. So they're telling us. So here's one study that was used. There's been high court cases throughout the world trying to get Wi-Fi out of schools. From what I understand, this is some of the research that was used. What they found was in studies in rats, after 3 generations, they were getting 57.7% increase in birth abnormalities and birth defects. Now, the reason behind this, you can imagine the young female children at school, you've got all the follicles, all the eggs that they're ever going to have. Right, so they're being irradiated. Now, if you could imagine a teenage girl getting pregnant while she's at school, she's going to be carrying her grandchild inside her. So they've been successful in some countries, in some states, in some areas, and then unsuccessful in others. Right. Magnetic fields. So 1 milligauss of magnetic fields increases the mortality rate of children with leukemia by 280%. 1.6 milligauss doubles the chance of sperm abnormalities, and 2 milligauss blocks the hormone melatonin and its natural anti-cancer action. So we're going to go into melatonin, I think, in the next slide. But what happens is when we sleep, melatonin not only regulates our sleep cycle and our cell division cycle, but it's a massive antioxidant that floods the body and mops up all the free radicals. So the 2 milligauss is blocking that action. And as we learnt before, we know that, and we're about to learn, electric radiation can create, via the voltage-gated calcium channels, that oxidative stress. So it's creating that acidic environment, that situation, which the melatonin is then being blocked from dealing with. So it's like a twofold effect. Quite often when, in my own experience, measuring houses, it's quite often when I'm measuring the back of a wall with a bed there, with a meter box, I might be measuring 6 milligauss or 8 milligauss. Usually by the time we get about a foot off the bed, it can be dropping down to under that 1, but sometimes not. You might, like I did a house the other day, we were measuring 2 milligauss on the pillow. Now the government safety standard, the set standard in Australia, last time I looked, was at 2000 milligauss. Yeah. So we just let that sink in for a second. Okay. So yeah, safety standard, last time I looked, was at 2000 milligauss.
And what did you measure in the bedroom?
At the bedroom, a lot of bedrooms are fine with a meter box on the back. You might find 2 milligauss on the pillow or more. Some places we go to where, I went to one place where the power lines out the front were causing a huge issue, and we were getting about 7 milligauss through most of the house. So as I was saying, melatonin is vital, the melatonin and serotonin in our body, to circulate that circadian rhythm and our cell division cycle.
And the 2000 milligauss is for short-term exposure?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I think that was just the upper limit of what people are allowed to be. Then short-term, industry might be different to go into areas higher, but I haven't looked into that any time recently. Yeah, we're gonna look into that in a sec. So blue light studies. So the pineal gland, which is responsible for melatonin and serotonin production, now that sees high frequency radiation as light. Okay, so like I said, with smart meter going off, one doctor said it was like a flash grenade going off. So it's like light, but we find with Wi-Fi, with mobile phone towers, all this kind of stuff, our body thinks it's daylight. Because as I was showing you before about the electromagnetic radiation wavelengths, light is just a part of that spectrum. So exposure to room light before bedtime suppresses melatonin onset and shortens melatonin duration in humans. Effects of blue light on the circadian rhythm and eye physiology, the impact of light from computer monitors on melatonin levels in college students. There's lots and lots of research out there. Some products that we can go into. One good way to look at it is the way that we used to live, the way we've evolved, with the no screens and the campfire or the candles. That's one way to get your circadian rhythm working properly. They did a study, they sent people camping, they monitored their circadian rhythm before and after, and they found that after a few days it had gone back into check, camping without devices, without power. And it's probably why we all feel better when we're out in the bush or down the beach. All right, so this, I'm gonna get through this quickly. This is the RF colour slides from the Bioinitiative report. Don't expect you to be able to read that. My eyesight's not that good either, but we're looking at, so as low as 10 to the negative 13. So that's 10 within, 13 zeros, decimal points behind a zero, right? Really, really, really small amount. So super low intensity RFR affects the resonant frequencies, resulting in changes in genes, problems with chromatin conformation. So that's your DNA. So your chromatin is responsible. Remember how I said before, your DNA, if you stretch it out, it's 2 meters long, about 3 billion digits worth of information. Right, chromatin is what is responsible for wrapping all that up into a tiny little packet in your cells. Right, so this tiny, tiny, tiny amount of electromagnetic radiation, there's studies that show that the way our DNA gets packaged is being affected. All right, so then we got so up to 0.01, we've got fatigue, depression, sleeping disorder, concentration difficulties, cardiovascular problems, headaches, irritation, concentration difficulties, to 0.05, conduct problems, behavioural issues, sleep disturbances, fatigue, headaches, sleeping problems. And this is all before we even get to 1 microwatt per, we're talking about microwatts per centimetre squared. Right, if you look at the brown one, the 0.38, the one right in the middle, RFR affected calcium metabolism in heart cells. So that's your voltage gated calcium channels being activated at 0.38. Reduced memory function in rats, double-strand DNA damage in rat brain cells at 2, more voltage-gated calcium channels on the brown one at 2.5. It goes on. So at 120 microwatts per centimetre squared, we get a pathological leakage in the blood-brain barrier. I mean, I don't know if you can imagine how serious that is. All right, so what's the limit in Australia? I thought you guys might like this one. In Salzburg, Austria, where Geovital's from, we've got a 0.001 microwatts per centimetre squared. Liechtenstein, 0.1, Bulgaria 1, Luxembourg, Belgium, Ukraine 2.4. I feel like I should be calling a horse race or something. Switzerland in schools and hospitals at 4.25. Switzerland in general is at 9.5. So at 10, we've got China, Lithuania, Russia, Italy, Poland, Paris. Then 100, we've got India and Israel. All right, so hands up if you think we're above 100. Hands up if you think we're above 200. Hands up if you think we're above 300. Let's see where we are. (1,000 microwatts per centimetre squared). We have a winner. Now these limits, from what I understand, are based on the studies showing what happens when cells are heated. Right? They're just negating what the scientists and the doctors have been saying, negating all these studies. All right, so here's another good group. We are not SAM. So how do they work out your cell phones? How safe they are? Well, SAM is the dummy. That's SAM right there. Right, so to pick the dummy's head size, they got the top 90th percentile of American military male heads. So they went and measured the biggest heads in the American military and went, right, you'll do. So it has no real world comparison to most of us, especially not to children. Right, so this is the heating, the electric radiation exposure and how it comes into the skull. You can see the difference between an adult skull, a 10-year-old child's skull, and a 5-year-old child's skull. So you never ever want to have a kid with their phone up against their head. I mean, we don't want to be doing it either. Children, their bones have a lot more water in them, so they're a lot more conductive and their skulls are a lot thinner. Now this is an old slide. I wasn't able to find a more recent one, but each phone has a different SAR rating. That's your specific absorption rate. So you can choose, how strong you want your phone to be. A lot of Samsung phones you'll find generally are lower down the lists because there used to be a law from the FCC that all mobile phones, the antennas had to be unidirectional, and they changed that, I think in the mid-2000s sometime. Samsung picked up on that and made most of their antennas go to the back of the phones, so when you're holding it against your head, which you never want to do by the way, it's lower.
They also say that you've got to hold it less, not more than 24 centimetres or something from your head.
They all differ, but as we learnt with the studies aren't. They're just taking into account thermal issues and for the big American male heads. One thing I like to say, has anyone ever felt their head hot from using a mobile phone? Yep. Has anyone ever pulled their phone out of their pocket and felt your legs still hot? All right. Imagine if you had 2 cups of tea. One was at 36 degrees and one was at 37 degrees. Do you think you'd be able to tell the difference? All right. So they're saying what is heating more than 1 degree is we've got to worry about when the research says different. But we're finding, and there was lawsuits about this, that it was a lot worse for most people.
I get the same effect from using a cordless mouse.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll do some questions. We'll do some questions then. So if you look into your phone, into your about on the phone, into the legal, you'll be able to find what your phone specifies as being the safe distance. So for every single phone out there that I've ever looked at, just putting it against your head or having it in your pocket, you are breaching the legal agreement with the company that you bought the phone from. But you didn't know that. Okay, so plants and animals are affected too. There's studies into colony collapse disorder in honeybees caused by EMF radiation. So bees and migratory birds, things like that, scientists believe they have magnetite receptors behind their eyes, and they believe they can actually see the Earth's grid lines and then migrate via these superhighways. They believe that when high frequency radiation with the bees, they did studies by putting little cordless phones. Oh, by the way, your cordless phone is like a mobile phone. So they put cordless phones inside hives, and every able-bodied bee in the hive left. Even trees can be affected. All right, so that's all the doom and gloom. What can we do about it? So this is the view from Geovital Academy. Now, Geovital Academy started. Warner Hahn, the old CEO, Sasha Hahn, our current CEO's mum, Warner Hahn's wife, had breast cancer. Now, all the mainstream doctors said, go home and die. There's nothing more we can do. So Warner Hahn went, like many of us would, not accepting that. Now, thankfully, he was in a position to go, and he wrote to naturopaths, biochemists, everyone he could think of, and said, I'm holding a symposium on cancer. I want you all to come and talk. So looking at all these different modalities and all their different viewpoints on cancer, how it works in the body and why it affects us and what causes it. Anyway, so the topic of radiation kept coming up. And Warner's like, well, what do we do? And everyone's like, well, there's nothing we can do. So the kicker for this was Warner Harnan had a 70,000 euro research grant for whoever could save his wife's life. They saved her life. But then he said, well, how do we stop her from getting cancer again? How do we stop my son from getting cancer? How do we stop, what can we do about this? And like I said, they said there's nothing. So he said, well, let's fix that. So they started Geovital, as we see it today, and formed a working group to develop some products to deal with this. All right. So just to show you what it looks like, this goes for 4 minutes. This is my clinic. I'm a kinesiologist. This is the clinic I work out of at Origin Health in Mornington. We shielded it. So here we are in the room that we're going to be shielding. We measure here. We've got 1,000. This is before painting. 3,000. See that? We had that up to, it was up at 5,000 before. Of course, this is what my body is absorbing of high frequency radiation from mobile phones, smart meters, Wi-Fi, all that kind of thing. 4,000. Now, this of course is not what we want to see in a healthy environment, somewhere where we're trying to make positive changes for our clients. But let's take a walk further into the building and see how these numbers change. Now, this building is actually concrete. It has a colour-bond roof. So away from those windows, as we're coming down, now it's dropping down as we get further and further into the building. So we have the great situation where Naomi Gillespie's room is actually quite low. It's at the levels we really want to see. Okay, if I saw these levels in a house, in a bedroom, I'd be quite happy with that 30 microvolt. But as we come back up to the front, we can watch this increase as we don't have that natural shielding of the building. What have we got here? So we're now back up to 500, 2,000, 3,000. So yeah, once again, this is why we're shielding this room. Here we are outside Origin Health. Let's have a look. What have we got? 3,000. Like I said, it's constantly fluctuating environment depending on who's using what data's being used, how many people. 4,000, 5,000. Now, if we have a look over here, I'll just turn this camera around, and we can see there's a tower just poking its head up there. And there's another one just over there. I mean, there's towers everywhere. We've got Wi-Fi, we've got smart meters. It's a saturated environment, and the situation's only getting worse. Here we are back at Origin Health. We've shielded with Geovital's T98 paint and used their Nova fabric curtains. We were measuring at over 6,000 microvolt in the body of absorption from mobile phone towers and things like that before we painted, before we shielded. Now let's see what we have. So it's sitting around the 50, 30. This was where I was standing last time when we measured that 6,000 in the body. And as you can see now, we're at about 50. So that's a big reduction from 6,000 microvolt down to 50. Great result. But as it stands, we're doubling up on the Nova fabric. I've just ordered some more to see how low we can just get this. Overall, a great result. All right, so that's what shielding a room looks like. I spent tens of thousands of dollars on trying to get better myself. Not to mention, you know, the lost income, not to mention the time away from the family and those years that I missed just lying in bed, being able to do nothing. If I had just known this in the first place, without a doubt, I would have gone and shielded my room. Straight up, first thing I've done. That had the biggest impact, and what we found was the biggest bang for your buck. So what we want to do is create a sleep sanctuary. So like I was saying before, when we sleep is when we grow new cells. So we wear during the day. So, you know, we're exposed to all this stuff, and sometimes, you know, most of the time there's not much that we can do about it during the day. But getting the bedroom right so you can grow the healthy new cells, it's vital. All right, so another thing is, do you remember like when we had the TVs with the aerials? Yep. When we wanted to get a better reception, we pulled some more metal out, or we used the curly ones. When we wanted to get really good reception and attract lots of, you know, radiation to our aerials, we put a great big aerial on our roofs, right? What are we sleeping on? Think about all the wire, all the metal in our mattresses. And even coming straight from the factory, a lot of mattresses can hold a static magnetic or a static electric charge, as well as being full of, you know, toxins and all kinds of stuff that's really bad for us, formaldehyde, that we're spending all night dealing with. Trick, if you a neat way to test, if you've got a compass, put it on your mattress and push down. So like the amount that you would push down when you're sleeping on it, and see where the needle goes. So building biologists worldwide say anything more than a 5-degree needle change is too much. It's too much stress on the body. As we were saying before, small static electric and static magnetic fields can affect our voltage-gated calcium channels. Right? I do some bedrooms where the needle on the compass spins around the other way. So Geovital, when they realised the mattresses were an issue, so the two biggest burdens in the bedroom were intolerances to the mattresses patients and clients were sleeping on, as well as radiation, you know, power in the walls, all that kind of stuff. They gave them a list of what to find in a mattress and sent their clients away. They wanted something anti-static, electrically neutral, anti-allergenic, toxin-free, bio-neutral materials, low electrical conductivity, metal-free, high air permeability. So our skin is our second breathing organ. We breathe through our skin. And a lot of mattresses, you know, it's like, you know, we're not getting that, you know, oxygen to our skin. You know, we can cause, you know, premature aging and things like that. Warner Harnan added a little thing because he had lower back issues like I do. So this, I've left it in the car. I'll have to show you after this. What happens is you're lying down, half the bed collapses one way, the other half collapses the other way, and it gives a gentle traction on the spine up to about 1 kilogram. Now, all the clients said, funny joke, you know, the mattress doesn't exist even without the spine stuff. So Geovital tested over 600 different mattress types on their patients via electroacupuncture, Vega testing, you know, intolerance testing, and they couldn't find a single one to recommend to everyone. They found the natural latex was the worst, with over 50% of their patients testing intolerant to natural latex. So just because something's natural doesn't mean our body likes it. You know, uranium's natural. Okay, so I sleep on one of these every single night, and it's made a big difference to me. I don't like not sleeping on it. All right, so we've got Geovital's T98 paint. As I said, carbon and graphite has a VOC, which is a volatile organic compound, rating of 0.2. Right? So what Geovital believes is they don't want to remove one burden and replace it with another, because then that's just going to, what's the point of that? GPA mesh, which is copper wire, which is coated in our paint, which we can put when we're building houses, we can put on the floor if you've got wiring underneath the floor. So you can put it underneath the carpet or underneath the rug. You can put it into the ceiling cavity. Nova fabric, I've got some here if you guys want to see it after the talk. So this is an absolute feat of engineering. It is copper wire, which has been silver plated and encased in either polyester or cotton. And as you saw with the video from the clinic, that's what we use to reflect that high frequency radiation. And we've got the circuit cutoff switches that go into your fuse box that we saw in the video with Dr. Laredo. And we have the geopathic stress mats. Now this is what I was talking about that the doctor put underneath the bed to move that natural energy. I'm rushing through this as fast as I can. I know you all want to get home. Here's a little video. This probably goes for 30 seconds. This is my son's room. Here we are in my young son's bedroom. Now we are reading 200. We just peaked at 200 microvolt in the body. Now this is a shielded room, but this is with the curtains open, the Nova fabric curtains. Now let's close the curtains and see what happens. And now we are at 30. Take a step back into the room. And we're now at under 10. So I want you to empower yourself. Things that you can do to help your body cope. So foods that feed inflammation. Now I found this out the hard way. Dairy, wheat and sugar, which was basically my staple diet. I thought I ate healthy. No. You know the food pyramid? Tip that upside down. Foods fried in vegetable oil, or any kind of oil, when they're superheated, so it becomes trans fats. So what happens is our cells create themselves and surround the cell wall with good fats from our body. If good fats aren't available, they'll use whatever they can get. So trans fats are plastic fats. It's like wrapping your cell in plastic. So it's very difficult to get the nutrients and the minerals that we need in our cells to grow healthy new cells and for our mitochondria to create energy. So it's like, once again, what can you do right now? Awaken your inner detective. So identify the sources of radiation in your home and either remove the source, remove yourself, distance is your friend, and if that's not achievable, then shield. You can think about things like, what are you carrying on you? You've got smartwatches, mobile phones, laptops, iPads. What are you sleeping next to? So often I go out to a client's home and they've got teenage children and the teenage kids are sleeping with their phones underneath their pillows, which is not only a massive fire risk, it's really bad biologically. You really want to keep all appliances out of the bedroom. A lot of people use their phones as an alarm clock. I mean, you can get one of those little battery-powered alarm clocks and use that or something like that. Don't get a clock radio. They're atrocious with fields. If you have to have your phone in your room, airplane mode and at least a metre away. You really don't want to be charging your phone in your room. Charging things can create dirty electricity. So we find every time voltage changes through transformers and things like that, it creates these high frequency transients. So it's basically like Wi-Fi going through your wires. Solar panels are atrocious for this, but thankfully, during the night when we sleep, solar panels aren't producing electricity. So we get a lower dirty electricity. That's another thing that we test for. What are you sleeping next to? Electric blankets are atrocious. Water beds. Imagine you're sleeping on water. Water has electrons in it. You've got electrons moving all night. Okay. Sprung mattresses, as we talked about. Power leads. A lot of the time I've gone out and they've got power leads all underneath their beds. you know, adapters on adapters, you know, even a stereo with speakers. I did a client's house the other day, and the daughter had 2 stereo speakers next to her bed, and I'm trying to put the compass on the bed to find the Hartman and Curry lines, and the compass was just like, what's that? Oh, right, okay. Okay, what are you spending a lot of time near? Dimmer switches. Dimmer switches can create that high frequency radiation. Meter boxes. So if your meter box is on the back of your lounge room, and your chair that you sit in to watch TV at night is right there next to your meter box, and you're sitting there with your device, you know, while you're watching TV, it's not a good situation. So just have a think about what you're near and move yourself away.
Yeah, it was in front of a computer.
That's its own thing. Well, we're going to get to that. So smart appliances. Powered couch. My brother loves his powered recliner, and he sleeps on it, and he just goes back and forth. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? All right, what can we do? Number 1, turn off your Wi-Fi. Use Ethernet. At the very, very least, turn off your Wi-Fi at night. Okay. I know some clients that will use one of those PowerPoint timers. You know, midnight, Wi-Fi, or 11 o'clock, whatever. Wi-Fi goes off. Turns back on at 7 in the morning. Ethernet adapters, as I was talking about. Here's some hinful tips. Distance. Distance is always your friend. So yeah, you never want to have your phone up against your head. Use speakerphone, or you can use, I have these air tube headsets. So you haven't got a wire going up. Because you imagine, even if you're using wired headphones, you're creating an antenna straight up to your brain. So it removes a bit of the section of wire, and it has air it's pushing through. Yeah, Bluetooth is Wi-Fi. Yeah, please don't use Bluetooth. What else? So yeah, just some helpful tips. Yeah, is there a fridge behind your bedroom wall? One place I went to, getting all these massive magnetic fields. What's going on? I knew the meter boxes at the end of the house, and he had the bar fridge right behind the bed in the next room. Oh, and don't stand next to a working microwave. You know how I was showing we got up to 6,000 microvolt. We want to see definitely under 100 in the bedroom. And you remember as kids, we'd have the microwave and we'd be waiting for our food to finish cooking. Right? Quite often I'll be reading 8,000 microvolt in the body next to the microwave oven. And that field usually goes out about 8 meters or so. So that's what your brain might look like. All right, so Bluetooth headphones. There's a company called Defender Shield. I feel they make the best products. This is the headset. My son uses those, my 4-year-old, and they means that it doesn't have that radiation going up into his head. You can have the little earbuds, and for a lot of phones that don't have the little headphone jacks, you can get adapters. I sell them. All right, so this is one of my favourite little bits of kit. I've put it away, but there's some down there. So these are a case for your mobile phone to block that radiation. So the front of the case has the blocking the radiation, whereas the signal comes out the back. So you always want to make sure the front of the case is towards your body. So like I was saying before, just by having it in your pocket, you're breaching those legal standards. Right? Put a case on it. So with the Defender Shield, they also deal with magnetic fields. There's a lot of cases that don't. They just deal with high frequency. But if you're going to put it in your pocket, get one of these. Same with the tablets. My son uses the little tablet cases that we sell. You never want to have a laptop in your lap. They shouldn't be called laptops. Even if they're on airplane mode, the magnetic fields coming from them, are bad. I mean, if you look at fertility, male sperm rates in all modern countries have dropped 50%. Because where do most guys hold their mobile phones? In their pockets. The tablets in their laps. Yeah. sitting at the table, it's distance is your friend. There's pads you can get that go underneath the laptops to help stop that coming through. Depends on the laptop, depends on the distance. They all vary.
And the kids in primary school use laptops and they're sitting down cross-legged with that laptop in their lap and they're getting irradiated.
Yeah. All right. So, and then we've got products to help reset our natural circadian rhythm. As I was saying before, when the sun goes down, you can choose just to return to candles and campfires without screens and artificial lights, which sounds really nice. All right, so we have blue blocking glasses. This is just your daytime screen time glasses, helps to reduce headaches and eye strain. This filters out 50% of blue light. These are what I recommend during the day, the Day Max. I love these things. All right, so you're looking at 100% of the harmful blue light, but 70% of total blue light. So we need a little bit of good blue light during the day. It helps with our circadian rhythm, but some wavelengths really not good for us.
But I've looked on for these blue blocking glasses. I already wear glasses. I want something to go over.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that too. All right, so then we've got sundown glasses. Gets rid of all the blue and leaves a little bit of the green. So that blocks 100% of blue light. All right, just to answer that question, because I didn't do a slide for it, because I wear glasses too. You got over glasses or these? These I just clip onto my glasses of an evening, you know, so I can watch some TV or whatever. Oh, I'm not too sure. We'll talk.
Short circuit?
I don't know. We'll talk later. Oh, yep. Oh, yep. I know what you're talking about now. Where was I? So there's also on your phones and on your TVs, you can actually use, a lot of phones have the built-in blue light filters, okay? So it doesn't filter everything out, but it helps. So things like that. You know, on your TV, you can set the settings to try and knock out some of that blue light. The other thing is your lighting in your homes. So this is one thing I absolutely love. I've got these in the clinic and I've got these in my home. These are full spectrum biolights. So you need a certain amount of frequencies through the day to regulate our circadian rhythm and that our body feeds on, basically. So this is actually one of them. It looks a bit yellow because of the lamp shade I got on it, but check this out. Where is it? Turn it off and on, it's now got no blue. And now it's sunrise, sunset. So as you flip your switch, so with the downlights, it remembers the last setting was on. So if you get up to go to the toilet in the middle of the night, you can turn the light on without waking yourself up. There's also, you can switch it on to sunrise or sunset as the sun starts to go down and help to reset that natural circadian rhythm. So you can see the diagrams of the spectrum of light. That's the full daylight. This is the evening, leaves a little bit of the blue and some of the green in, and then we've got no blue. All right. Another thing I've got some down here. These are book lights. These are my 4-year-old loves these. So it goes 3 different colours. You turn it off and on. He likes the red and he calls it the campfire mode. So we read books every night in campfire mode. There was a study into melatonin production. Trying to remember off the top of my head. I think it was more than 2 minutes exposure within an hour of going to bed of blue light can reduce melatonin production by up to 80%. Okay, so which is massive. So it's vitally important that we start getting some good habits. I mean, we've had this explosion of technology over such a short time now, and we spend so much money on our devices, on everything. Now we need to start understanding what it's doing to us and pushing back the other way. All right, so what changes can you make today? And that's this. I want you all to go away and have a think about what you're using, have a think about what you're living with, and make some changes. If you want Geovital to come out, we can come out and do an assessment. I thought I'd do a special here for you guys. This community has helped some people that I care about. So say the first 5 people that book a home assessment with me, I'll knock $100 off it. And if you want to come see me in the kinesiology clinic, we'll see what we can do there. All right, so any questions over the rain? Might have to hold this microphone out.
LED globes. Tell us about them.
Yeah.
Are they
Yeah.
great?
So these are LEDs, right? That are these biolights, but LEDs have a lot of the blue light in them, which is why it's not good. You get some lights with the halogens, with the transformers. You can get big magnetic fields from those. Those spiral ones the government was putting out, they're atrocious. The best things, believe it or not, are those old incandescent light bulbs. Right? Well, these are better than that, but compared to everything else.
Any questions? I'll come around with the microphone.
We got one at the.
You've already asked 12 questions.
We got one at the front here.
Oh,
It's really all of the electronics and things that I have in my bedroom, but I've recently had to have a CPAP machine.
Right.
So what do I do with
Okay. So I've got friends with CPAPs. So what to do about a CPAP machine in the bedroom? So that's the breathing to help with snoring and get the sleep apnea, get the better airways. Distance is your friend. Okay, you can do things like I've known of people that say have used the GPA mesh or got some wood and painted the paint on. So when we ground the mesh or ground the paint, it gives the electric fields somewhere to go. Right? Some of the new CPAP machines are Bluetooth enabled and they're constantly transmitting. So you want to basically create a barrier between the CPAP and yourself. It's okay for the tubes coming through, but the more that you can, shield, I guess, against, the better it's going to be.
Albert, did you have a question?
Hi, I wonder if I can't get your device with the meter box and I have a smart meter, unfortunately. What if I switch the main switch off overnight? Because I don't go to the fridge, I don't use it.
Okay.
What would that do if I did that every night? Would that do something to the smart meter?
I'll get the microphone and I'll answer. So we're asking about what if you switch the power off to the house. Professionally, I can't advise that because what if you get up in the middle of the night and it's an emergency, you need to switch a light on, it's like, oh, the power's out. But I have clients that do this, that switch the power off. What we do with Geovital is we locate which circuit the fridge is on, and then you can either put the cut-off switches on or, like I said, some clients will choose to turn everything else off. Unfortunately, that doesn't stop the smart meter from transmitting. The smart meter will transmit regardless of whether or not you're using power, just to say, hey, there's no power being used. And again, still no power. Other thing I wanted to add, so there's people that will just go and shield one wall that the smart meter is on. Now, that can help, but that can also make the situation a lot worse. So if you say you've got your smart meter here and then you've got a mobile phone tower here and here and here and here, so what's happening is the mobile phone towers can then be coming through. Conductive materials reflect high frequency radiation. So you can be getting that mobile phone tower once, it bounces off the wall and bounces back through you again. So whilst there are circumstances where it can improve the environment, there are also circumstances which can make it much worse. This is why we always shield everything, all walls, ceiling and ground it. That way you don't have to worry because there's new towers going up all the time. There's the new small cell technology where they want to be putting 5G towers every 200 metres. The situation's just getting more and more saturated, so it's more and more important to shield. The other thing is we're finding in Europe where this is a lot, we're quite behind in Australia, as most of you know. they're finding when they're selling their houses, they're then being able to advertise, okay, they're a shielded house and they're a Geovitally shielded house. And they're finding better returns. They're getting more money back than what the initial outlay was, as well as living in a healthy home.
Any other questions? Down the back, Lisa?
Can you put a circuit breaker on if you don't have a smart meter? I don't have a smart meter.
Yeah, absolutely you can, because you've still got all the, hang on, I'll grab this. You've still got all the electric fields pulsing out from all the cabling in your house. So that pulses out at 50 hertz per second, usually about 2 meters away from the cable. So for most rooms, there's nowhere you can go where you're not copping these electric fields. Right? So when we shield with the paint and we ground, now grounding the paint wasn't designed to deal with electric fields, but it's a nice, pleasant surprise that it then gives those fields somewhere to go. Using the circuit cutoff switches will then, deal with those fields. But yeah, like I said, there's some clients that choose to turn off.
With the calcium channel thing that you're talking about, is there a way that would protect our body internally, like vitamin Z, antioxidants, or something like that?
There's...
One question.
Yeah, sure, yep.
5G streetlights, what can we do to protect ourselves?
Okay. So with the 5G streetlights, there's a lot of people fighting the good fight, trying to stop them from happening. But more often than not, as we've seen, the industry just rolls over, over the people. Like I said, getting your bedroom right is priority number one, because that's when we grow new cells. As for the, I hope that they don't bring them in, but I'd be surprised if they get stopped. What was it, sorry? Yeah, yeah. But they're, as that network keeps expanding. As for nutrients for voltage-gated calcium channels, I'll have to look that up and get it back to you for one specific. Things that feed your mitochondria, things that feed your cells. Another thing I want to say, so with the voltage-gated calcium channels, we find that too much calcium in the cell affects the magnesium balance, right? So this is why we find, basically everyone does better with magnesium supplements or foods rich in magnesium. Because even if you have a blood test and it shows your magnesium levels are okay, right, that's not a true representation of what's going on in your cells. So the blood will stay balanced in minerals, and then the cells might be a completely different story.
Any other questions?
Not a question, just a statement. There is a video I've got at home about a town in England where they installed these streetlights, and they had a town meeting and they actually had them all removed.
Oh, awesome. That's great.
That'll be helpful for anybody.
Yep.
The grounding sheets, so they're a problem, and also I want to know why, and also the paint, how long might it last for?
Okay. So grounding sheets in theory are a great idea. We need to be getting grounded into the earth. We tune our bodies to the earth. Grounding helps us to drop extra voltage that we pick up, as well as we need those frequencies from the earth. Problem is, using a grounding sheet in a high EMF environment, like we find in 95% of homes, people measure with a voltmeter and go, oh, I've got 0 volts. It means I mustn't have any volts, right? But it's a grounded surface, so of course it's going to read 0 volts. It becomes an inappropriate way to measure. So if you can imagine those fields that are in the bedroom, they're trying to find a way to get to ground. And we're putting a great big antenna, and then they're attracted to that and they're going through the ground. But then we're lying on the antenna. So even if we have 0 volts, we can still have current going through us, still activating those voltage gated calcium channels. So I've got quite a few clients that have had grounding sheets and said they've slept horribly. I tried them before I found Geovital, and I had the worst night's sleep ever. But in a shielded environment or a low EMF environment, things like grounding sheets can sometimes be okay. Okay, personally, I don't recommend them. With the paint, how long we've been making the paint? Since 92? 88. Okay, 1988 is when we made this paint. 98. Ah. So the reason the paint came, super quick story, was there was a class action lawsuit in Germany. 200 radar room operators in the German military and surrounding personnel got cancer. So the Austrian military came to Geovital and said, what do we do? And we said, what do you mean, what do you do? You're the military. And they said, well, you guys are the ones that know about this stuff. So with the military, we developed this paint. So we've been since, would you say 98? Since 1998, we've been painting it, and it's still, we're finding just as good results as the first day that it was put on. The other thing with the paint, as each time radiation hits it from inside, say if you've got, like in Son's bedroom with the curtain open, it absorbs 15% of the wavelength, the power, each time it hits the paint. So it bounces around a little bit, but it absorbs. Yeah, did I answer the question? Was that right? Okay.
So when it's absorbed, does it dissipate, like it goes through to the ground?
Yeah, well, most of the time it'll hit and just bounce onto the ground. Yeah.
Any other questions? What do you think of shielded clothing?
That's a great question. Okay, so this is where I take off my Geovital hat. So Geovital, so we were talking about body voltage, okay? So we don't want this increase in body voltage. We find that with shielded clothing, of course, voltage is still going to be high, okay? But then we can also find that you're not getting these frequencies penetrating into the skin, into the epidermal layer with the shielded clothing. So myself, I was incredibly hypersensitive to the point, headaches, drool, I was a mess. I remember the first time I tried a shielded top, I cried because the headaches and the pain just went away straight away. Okay, it doesn't solve all the problem, okay? There is more and more studies coming out to show how it can help, but as long as we are aware that it's not a complete solution. Does that make sense? You got any more to it?
Okay. It's 25 past 9. Another question.
Does the aluminium against the smart meter, does it work?
The foil.
Okay, so foil against smart meters. I actually tried this before I found Geovital. I'm guilty of this. Any conductive material is going to have an effect on high frequency radiation, but how much of an effect it has. So I've had clients that have experimented by putting foil up around their house and doing all kinds of things. Like I said, it can make the situation worse with what's coming out from other places. It can dampen the signal, but as I found out the hard way, I should have just done it right the first time. Yeah, and spent the money. Okay, yeah.
Heavy metal detoxes and metals in your body, is that one of the main reasons that we react to all this stuff? And should we look at that too?
Absolutely look at heavy metal detoxing. There's lots of things that, so much research showing the biological effects, especially with mercury amalgam fillings. My work as a kinesiologist, this is a really cool thing. I measure body voltage, but through the meridian channels, I can check the voltage of different organs in the body and then rebalance that. I've got this thing called the biomodulator developed by Dr. Jerry Tennant. in the States. It's a very expensive piece of kit, but it's amazing. But we find that with metal fillings, as well as being atrocious to us, it can affect the way that the meridian line that metal filling is attached to can affect that voltage, and it's very difficult to get that voltage back up to where it should be. With the other part of that question that I wanted to say is, I mean, we're 80% water. Water is incredibly conductive, so we're going to be conductive anyway. I have heard of people that have had high heavy metal toxicity being electromagnetic hypersensitive and being affected by frequencies a lot more. So I think there's definitely something to it.
We've got Josie's got a very good pesto, coriander pesto recipe, which is actually supposed to be good for helping remove heavy metals.
Just wanted to ask, how much is your consult to come out and check out your home?
Okay, it depends on how many bedrooms, where you live, and if I do kinesiology intolerance testing. So the reason why I learnt kinesiology in the first place was to be able to go into the bedroom, because I mean we're measuring with the meters, I'll show you one in a sec, to measure your body voltage. We know the stats, we know what Geovital have been doing for over 40 years, so we know what works and what doesn't, but each one of us is different. Okay, what affects someone might affect someone else more. Like that linear scale of health I was talking about, some people have a longer scale, some people were born with that scale half full. So everyone's different. Some people react to gluten, peanuts, stuff like that. So I want an intolerance test to see what you're reacting to. Is it the sheets? I had one client who was reacting to polyester. Is it the paint? Is it the carpet? Is it, what's going on? And then with what we find, how do we prioritise, what you need to do first? If we got high levels or something, of course we'll be on the meters, we'll be going, yeah, do this first. But if everything's kind of the same, it's like, well, where do we spend our money? How are we going to get the biggest bang for our buck? So yeah, it all depends. I did an assessment last time. I did one in Frankston. It was around $500. Some of them, because I'm kind of local, and for you guys to be around that price. Some of them, usually I'm walking in the door about $700. But yeah, it all depends. I can give you individual quotes.
Just a thought. In order to offset the cost of your assessment, what about the health insurance that you may have, or like you got life insurance or something like that, and you want to make yourself? Would they come to the party possibly?
I've never known anyone to, unfortunately. The other thing I did want to add though is once you've had an assessment done by me, being a Geovital consultant, you'll then, you can then get the client pricing with Geovital. So we want to make healthy bedrooms, and we want to make sure people use the products right and choose, what's right. So we sell the mattresses. We don't want to put a mattress in an unhealthy room. And people go, I don't feel any better. When the problem, they really should have spent the money on the paint first or something like that. So yeah, it's usually around 15%, which helps a lot. And that quite often covers the cost of the consult getting out there in the first place. Thanks, Kimberly.
All right, we might finish it up there. Now there is some cards here, and you'll stay around for a little bit.
Yeah, I'll stay around for a bit.
So if anyone wants other questions, you can come and see Tristan. We've got the first of all, thank you very much for a fantastic presentation.
Thank you. Thanks all for having me.
Thank you. I think that was great, and certainly take your time to grab some cards. You don't have to speak tonight, but if Tristan's around, come and ask him some more questions, and he's got some things here that are available. So come and have a look at those before we.